I played through Starbound as the Knight class. This means that I can't use any other weapons except melee and bows. This is thanks to the mod RPG Growth, which adds RPG-like elements to Starbound. I will also be enabling Rally Mode, which scales the enemies to be much more powerful than normal. We fought monsters like a giant eye monster, a rogue ninja, or even a massive dragon, and this is how I did it. Okay, I chose a glitch, a medieval robot, as I thought it would be fitting. I explored the first planet as usual, and gathered essentials. After doing some basic exploring, I encountered the first challenge in this run, the Mama Pop Top. The Mama Pop Top isn't a boss, but it is by far one of the most powerful mobs you can catch. Well, kind of. As when you catch a Mama Pop Top, it reverts to an adult Pop Top, which is identical but isn't capable of spawning baby Pop Tops to fight for it. Anyways, if you're new to this game, this mob can definitely end up killing you, as the first time you encounter it, there's a small arena that you can't jump out of without building, and it has an extremely large amount of health, so it will likely be able to get a few hits in on you as well, which do pretty high damage when compared to most mobs at this point. Luckily, being the seasoned Starbound player that I am, combined with the ability of the broken broadsword, I was able to stunlock the Pop Top, then kill it without even breaking a sweat. Okay, next up is the Urkius mining facility, which is home to the Urkius Horror. I sped through the entire facility, and honestly the only thing really different in this area compared to vanilla is that since I'm a knight, it was kind of annoying to traverse the area since knights are heavier than other characters. And since I didn't have any tech, I had to use good old-fashioned rope to reach high places. I eventually did make it to the end of the mining facility, and since I've done this mission like a million times, I just figured I could rush through the boss and move on without really having to try. But remember, knights are quite heavier than the average Starbound character. I literally couldn't jump up to the next platform, so I had to craft a shit ton of rope, like an actual shit ton. Besides having to waste a lot of plant fiber, which is used to make healing items by the way, I also had to be extremely careful about remembering to heal, as there were times where I just had to take a hit from the laser that the boss shoots out. Normally taking a hit wouldn't be a big issue, but it seems like the boss's lasers were kind of ramped up to counteract the stationary boss. On top of the lasers, I also had trouble maneuvering because my character was so much heavier than I was normally used to, and there were a couple times where I did take substantial fall damage. I was able to beat the boss, but it was almost kind of humbling coming so close to death on what I thought was going to be the easiest boss of the run. Okay, next up is the Florin Hunting Grounds, home to the Ixodoom, which is basically like a giant bug monster thing. Florin Hunting Grounds is, as the name implies, a place where Florin participate in the hunt, which is an annual ceremony similar to the Hunger Games, where only the best will win. None of the Florin here are particularly powerful, and the only two contenders for making it to the end of the hunt are us and Nuru. Nuru is just a Florin NPC. Anyways, this mission felt virtually unchanged, and the only thing that was really different for me was that it took a bit longer than usual for me to slay the Ixodoom. Combining the power of Nuru and my teammate that I found, along with the fact that I had tier 2 armor, the boss was kind of a snooze fest. You honestly probably could just focus on the little Ixolings that the boss lays down every few seconds, and Nuru could just handle the entire boss for you. Anyways, next up is the Grand Pagoda Library. This is home to Astra Nox, the only recurring boss character in the entire game, and the biggest person behind the Earth's destruction, so you would think that she's extremely powerful. This mission was made a bit more difficult due to my character's movement nerfs. There was even a couple moments where I almost faced death, but honestly, I'd say Astra at this point is kind of mid. I will admit, she does have a diverse fighting style, and again, if you're new, you will probably have some trouble with her, but other than her maybe catching me off guard by teleporting behind me, I didn't have too much issue battling her with restrictions. The main reason being that you can only hit her when she's stationary, so the only difference in this battle compared to vanilla is my mobility from being a knight, meaning I maybe take a couple more hits, and my DPS, which unfortunately wasn't the highest since I didn't have the best secondary broadsword ability. I also did use a few salves, which I didn't really use in the last battle, so there's that I guess. Anyways, the next area is where things get a bit more interesting. The Great Sovereign Temple, which is home to the avian deity Cluex, and it's full of way more deadly weapons like fire traps or spike traps. I had upgraded my tech pretty substantially, and I upgraded my stats to improve my mobility, so I no longer really needed to worry about traps as much. But I do think it's worth noting that without proper healing and protection, these traps could easily kill an unprepared player, especially if you haven't upgraded your tech. Anyways, I did fight a giant totem mini-boss which did nearly kill me. The main reason being that there were what felt like a million scorpions scurrying around him, is since my only means of fighting is close combat, I have to get pretty close to them to swing, meaning I take a couple more hits than usual. Unfortunately, I had my hammer equipped when fighting them, and it can be quite difficult to wind up without getting hit, so I took quite a bit of spam damage from those little things running around my feet. The worst part was that I had to dodge the totem's projectiles all while fighting these scorpions. After defeating the totem, I moved on to the next area. The final challenge in the Grand Sovereign Temple is the Cluex Avatar, and this is easily the most challenging part of the mission. The Avatar at first was relatively easy to fight, only being stationary, but unlike the Arceus boss, it attacked me with projectiles and ice. I easily fried the Avatar's health with my hammer, but then the Avatar morphed into its second form. The Avatar then immediately bombarded me with red projectiles that destroyed my health bar, and then I retaliated with my hammer while he summoned ice from the floor. And I thought that I gained the upper hand, but then the Avatar started using a wind ability that was preventing me from moving where I wanted to. And I might be sounding like a broken record, but I just have to say it. My mobility isn't as good as other characters. Why does that matter here? Well, because I pretty much couldn't even fight the wind movement at all. On top of having low mobility, it didn't help that at this point in time, in real life, I was kind of feeling a bit fatigued, so my reaction time was a bit slower than normal, meaning I caught myself slipping up more than a handful of times in this mission. Since I wasn't able to fight the wind off very well, I ended up coming into contact with the middle of the Avatar, which hit me extremely hard. To top it all off, right after taking that huge hit, I then got hit by like a red blade-like projectile that got me so one-shot that if you breathe in my direction, I'd probably die. Luckily for me, I was granted a breather as the Avatar reset its attack pattern. I then realized that I might actually die if I don't pick it up, so I then pulled out my shield and took the time to heal, and as soon as I figured the time was right, I pulled out my sword with the Super Spin Slash ability and spammed it while the Avatar tried to hit me with its ice ability. I was able to output so much DPS that I actually killed the Avatar before it could even reset its attack pattern again. This means that we can now move on to the Mini Nog Stronghold, home to Big Ape. Okay, now that that's out of the way, I absolutely ran through the Mini Nog. There's not really any crazy traps or mini bosses before the end, so we might as well just skip to the good part. Moving on to Big Ape, this boss is interesting because it doesn't have 2 stages, but it has 4. The boss kinda reminds me of Skeletron, and has 4 missile launchers as arms, and every time you destroy one, it just pisses him off even more. If you're fast enough, before the boss can even attack you, you can actually destroy one of those missiles. But since I'm limited on my weapon range and have to get pretty close, I unfortunately missed out on that window. I then nearly died almost immediately because Big Ape hit me with a bunch of traps that were set around his arena. I know I did say that I'm fairly limited on range, but at some point, I actually did find a ranged weapon that the knight is capable of using, that being the poison bow. I used this to slowly whittle away at one of Big Ape's missile arms, and managed to take it out with a swipe of my sword. This brings him to stage 2, which isn't much different from the first stage, but it does cause him to retaliate with a bunch of blue bullets that did fairly negligible damage. I then took advantage of that and managed to take out another arm, which only further enraged the ape. At stage 3, he then started moving much faster and continued to whittle away at my health. It was at this point that I actually had to use quite a bit of bandages just to mitigate all the damage I was taking. I was able to take out another arm, and his final arm started freaking out. And he revealed his final attack, a barrage of missiles. But honestly, I feel like his best move was when he turned the arena into a bullet hell and also shot a bunch of fist missiles at me at the beginning, because it was almost inevitable that I would just get hit. His missiles actually made it easier for me to attack him, so I then seized this opportunity and used my sword to deal the final blows. We're now nearing the endgame, and the next mission is the Glitch Keep, which is home to the Baron, but it ends up being invaded by Astronox riding the Bone Dragon, the final challenge of this mission. In between missions, I obtained 2 of the best swords that knights can use in this game, that being the Violeum Broadsword, which has an amazing secondary flip attack, and the Firestorm's Fury, which is basically a sword and a flamethrower combined. This is especially good for the Knight class, as it provides a decent mid-range attack that can burn multiple enemies, while still being able to actually be used by the Knight class, as other weapons are just completely unusable due to the restrictions. I grabbed these weapons because I thought that maybe this next fight would be a good challenge because the Bone Dragon flies, but it wasn't really the most difficult. I think the worst part of the mission was that I had to kill like a million cultists before even attempting to kill this thing, and by the time the dragon came, I was just playing autopilot. This didn't even really affect the outcome of the fight either, as I just continuously spammed bandages while using the Violeum Broadsword's ability to deal massive damage to the dragon. It normally probably wouldn't be the best weapon against the dragon, but my mobility is fairly high now for a knight, And also, the dragon was flying pretty low and kind of just like sat in one place and didn't really move. This means I deadass just rinsed and repeated for like a minute and then just killed the boss without almost dying, unlike the previous two bosses, which actually gave me quite a bit of trouble. With that boss out of the way, this means that I now have successfully as a knight defeated every single main story boss, without fail, all with rally mode enabled. Well, all except one. The last challenge being the Ruin. The Ruin is interesting because the planet it's located on is actually itself. Before I can fight the Ruin, I ran into Asura for one final showdown on it. I'm not even gonna count her as a boss in this mission though, because other than being freakishly fast, she died in what felt like 3 hits from my fire sword. She then bolts off, and we finally face the real challenge, the Ruin itself. I was honestly pretty worried about this fight because I didn't want to die, so I prepared a couple stim packs just in case, which basically just give me an extra health boost or something, you know? But I honestly didn't even really think about just how good my weapons were for this fight. They were so good that I didn't even end up using the stims. The Ruin is a stationary boss that really only shoots hazards at you, and while being extremely powerful, I still think Big Ape did it better. He's harder to hit because he's mobile, and he has multiple stages. The Ruin just sits in one place, so this means just like the Bone Dragon, I can just abuse this with the Veolium Broadsword. So I did just that. The secondary ability allows me to slice him over and over before even hitting the ground, then following up with my primary attack. Also, it acts as a good cleanup tool to get rid of those annoying eyeball monsters that the Ruin constantly spawns, so it's really just almost a perfect melee weapon for him. The only weapon that I think a knight might benefit even more from is a sword with the super spin slash ability, but I'm not sure if it would be able to clean up the smaller enemies as easily. Regardless, the Veolium Broadsword made it that much easier to absolutely pummel the Ruin, and eventually this led to its demise, and we then respawn at the Ark. This means we defeated the Mama Pop Top, the Urkius Horror, a giant dragon, and even the strongest being in the entire universe, all with the power of the knight. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and let me know what class I should use next time. Peace.